Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how I altered an IKEA mattress by cutting off the corners to fit my motorhome island bed. The motorhome came with a foam mattress which just wasn't comfortable enough, and so I knew I wanted a pocket sprung mattress. But the commercially available ones were just too expensive, so I set about altering a pocket sprung mattress from IKEA. The project started with a trip to IKEA to pick up the mattress and assembling a few tools I had around the house. The tools are pretty basic: a seam ripper, a straight edge, a box cutter and scissors, a Sharpie, a Japanese saw, some spray adhesive, measuring tape, and various needles, threads, and some pins. After a little bit of online research, I chose the Hovag mattress. It was pocket sprung, but the IKEA website also showed me it had a structure that would allow me to make the alterations I wanted. To get started, I needed to open up the outer coverings. This was just a matter of taking a seam ripper and carefully cutting the stitching, being careful not to cut the fabric. It can be a bit tricky to start the first few stitches, but once you've achieved that, it's relatively straightforward to cut away the rest of the opening. Once the fabric cover has been removed, it's a matter of getting through the different foam layers to access the pocket springs. I just use a craft knife to separate the perimeter walls from the top piece of foam. I was happy to see the inside looked pretty much as the IKEA website picture had suggested. I used a straight edge to mark where I wanted the finished edge of the mattress to be. I then marked a second line, 60mm in from the first, which would allow for the new perimeter foam wall. I then marked each of the pocket springs that were positioned on the outside of that line and removed them by cutting open the pocket with the craft knife. I decided to leave the pockets in place, and because you can't cut half a spring, the line was not straight, but that was okay. I decided I would fill it with some foam offcuts later. Here I'm using the Japanese pull saw to cut the perimeter wall of the mattress. I then figured out, rather than cutting away the foam, it was just as handy to use brute force and pull it. The glue gave away quite easily. Because the offcuts were mitered, I could glue them together to create one long piece that I could use for the new perimeter of the mattress. I'm then using the Sharpie to mark the external perimeter of that bottom piece of foam. Then I could apply the spray adhesive to all of the surfaces, wait the designated length of time, and carefully put in place the new perimeter wall. I removed the bottom piece of foam on the mark I had previously drawn, and using the bottom piece as a template, cut away the top. I then used various pieces of the offcut foam and padding to fill out any gaps around the springs in the mattress. This was really a case of trial and error. The main objective was to ensure there were no bulges on the top or the foot of the mattress. Then apply a final layer of the adhesive to the mating surfaces. And bring all of the surfaces together to form a nice square edge. Once the foam structure had been reassembled, it was time to reattach the cover. The first step was to sew the grey binding to the top white cover. I did this with a simple stitch as I could access both the top and bottom of the binding. Attaching the side wall to the binding is more difficult as you don't have the same level of access. To get around this, you need to use a curved needle and what I've learned is called a ladder stitch. These are my first few minutes attempting the ladder stitch. Thankfully, I got better as the day progressed. There are a number of tutorials on YouTube that will help you get to grips with the ladder stitch. My approach was to take between 5 and 8 millimeters from the side wall and a similar amount from the binding and run the needle parallel to the binding in both cases, pulling them very tightly together. Because of the amount of force you'll be putting on the thread to pull both sides together, it's important to use a strong thread. I used one called Top Stitch from Gutterman. The IKEA mattress had a zip on the cover, which led me to believe it was possible to remove the cover and reattach it, and perhaps do all this sewing on a machine as opposed to by hand. Having done some reading online, however, I found that many people who had removed the mattress cover were unable to get the mattress back into the cover, so I decided to stick to sewing by hand. The sewing was by far the most time-consuming part of this project. It was tedious, not difficult, but really time-consuming. Here you can see I'm using a binder clip to attach the wall of the mattress to the top binding to align things and make it easier for me to sew. I will provide some links in the description to the tutorials that I found useful. Eventually, I did get to the end of the sewing, and I was quite satisfied with the end result. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful.